Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unfiltered with Sam. Today, we're joined once again by former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and United Nations weapons inspector, Scott Ritter, to help us unpack everything that's currently unfolding across my region here in the Middle East, as well as the latest developments on Scott's side coming out of Washington, D.C. So, Scott, it's always a pleasure to have you back. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Scott, Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu's most recent visit to Washington, D.C. was, as we speak, just a couple of days ago. Officially, he came to D.C. to attend Senator Lindsey Graham's funeral, but as expected, he once again paid a visit to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House. It's worth noting that he made the trip by flying over 4 countries that are parties to the International Criminal Court, despite the ICC arrest warrant against him. And immediately after his meeting with President Trump, he made comments in Hebrew to the Israeli media. And later, he had a sit down with Sean Hannity of Fox. And he described this particular meeting with Trump as the best meeting he'd ever had with the sitting U.S. president. So, given how his previous meetings have often been followed by major military developments or escalations in our region here, what, if anything, do you think that statement signals now for us?
Well, first of all, we have to put things in a context. Benjamin Netanyahu's in a fight for his political life. There are elections being prepared for in Israel where his party will more than likely lose. It looks like he's behind in the polls, and so he will be removed from office. And then the question is, what happens to him? Does he go to jail? Because he's one of the most corrupt people on the planet, and he's on trial for corruption. Right now, he has sort of immunity because he's the prime minister. But what happens when he's not the prime minister? Will he receive continued immunity by his political opponents? And so, it would have been nice to have been a fly on the wall to hear the conversation. What else is going on in Bibi Netanyahu's pathetic little life? The greater Israeli project is floundering. As we speak, the Israeli army is being hammered to death on the front lines against Hezbollah. Hezbollah drones control the casualty count on the front. They're making life hard for Israeli troops up to 20, 30 kilometers into their depth. Israel's not winning. In fact, they're losing. You lose by not defeating Hezbollah, but you also lose by being beaten by Hezbollah. It doesn't matter what kind of political arrangements they have with the United States and the president of Lebanon. Notice I didn't say the Lebanese government. I just said the president of Lebanon to sell Lebanese sovereignty, which is what the president of Lebanon did in cutting some side deal. The Lebanese people aren't buying it, and Hezbollah is not buying it, and Israel's not getting it. They want some magic to happen in Syria, where the former al-Qaeda operative is now supposed to lead an army of jihadists into Lebanon to threaten Hezbollah. That's not going to happen. Yemen isn't defeated. Yemen not only strikes Israel, but now is striking Saudi Arabia, impacting global energy markets to the detriment of Israel. Israel's finally talked Donald Trump into attacking Iran. Worst mistake Donald Trump ever made. And it's clear it was the worst mistake Donald Trump ever made. He wakes up every morning ruining the decision to attack Iran, but now he's stuck. So what are they talking about? Well, Greater Israeli Project is stalled in terms of Middle East territorial acquisition. But there's an even greater Israeli project taking place here in the United States, where Israel has bought Congress, and Congress is passing legislation that will make no Chinese wall will exist between Israeli intelligence and American intelligence, Israeli military and American military. We're going to become, in effect, one, a singularity. So this is a great victory for Benjamin Netanyahu. A tiny little fake nation in the Middle East is now taking control of the United States. It's no longer the United States of America. It's Greater Israel. And so maybe that's why it was the greatest conversation he ever had with an American president, because it represents the total victory of the Israeli state over the United States of America. Israel now owns America. Israel is America.
Gosh, so many things to unpack just from this one answer, but let's take them one by one. Let's take them from the most recent one that you just raised. Do you want to tell our viewers, if there are any viewers out there who still don't know what you're talking about? You're obviously referencing the July 22 vote by the floor of Congress of the NDAA, of the National Defense Authorization Act, right? And tell them why the passage of that, and it still has to go through Senate, is very important. What's particularly concerning about it? Section 219, it used to be 224 and now it's 219. Do you mind telling, because there are people in the US who have no idea about that, and it's very concerning. It's the surrender of American sovereignty, right?
I believe it is, and I think any rational reading of Section 219 represents that. Look, the United States has been conditioned for some time now, for decades, into believing that we and Israel are the same. In fact, when I traveled to Israel back in the 1990s, the Israelis would often on their national holidays put the Israeli flag out one window and the American flag out the other window and act as if they are an extension of American democracy. They'd like to say we are the 51st state. And it was sort of meant tongue in cheek to imply the closeness of our societies. But the more you learn about Israel, the more you realize that there's nothing close about Israel to America. Israel is the antithesis of America. Israel is a genocidal state ruled by genocidal maniacs. It's the most racist, white supremacist state imaginable since Adolf Hitler's Germany. Israel is despicable. Israel respects no laws. Israel doesn't have a constitution. Israel wouldn't comprehend what a constitution was. And yet the Israelis have convinced the American people that we are one and the same. We are allies. We're close. We're brothers. We're cousins. We're the same family. And then they've gone out and bought Congress over the course of the last decade or so. Israel has spent $100 million to buy Congress. They brag about it. I'm not making this up. They openly brag about it. We spent $100 million to control Congress. This is AIPAC, the Israeli lobby here in the United States. And they spent $30 million to get rid of Thomas Massey in Kentucky. So Israel owns the United States Congress, and therefore, when you buy something, you get to make it do what you want to do. And what the Congress has done is pass the House has passed the National Defense Authorization Act within is Section 219 that basically blurs the line between Israel and the United States on important issues of intelligence, military research, and development. This means now that Israel have direct access to American secrets as if they were Americans. There is no longer a difference between the two of them. Israel is the biggest spy against America, the biggest spy against America. The FBI and CIA have said this for the longest time. The number one intelligence threat faced by the United States comes from Israel. Israel spies on everything, everybody. Hell, go to the mall. You see those little kiosks in there with the Dead Sea salts for your skin? That's an Israeli Mossad front collecting economic data. We know it. They know it. Everybody knows it. But the average American just walks by as if it's nothing. Your credit cards are being scanned by the sensors they have in their kiosks. This is part of the Palantir type data control that's taking place. Total data collection by Israel in America with no stuff. It's espionage. They're doing the same thing with our communications in Washington, D.C. We have a president right now who has no communications security. Every conversation, every tweet, everything he has is being collected by the Israelis. They know what he's thinking before he thinks it. And so this has been happening for a long time. If any other nation was doing this, we'd call it one of the greatest threats to American security. But because Israel does it, we forget about it. They control our media empire. Again, when I was working with NBC in 1998, 1999, every producer in NBC News, every producer would come up to me after I did an interview and would hand me their card, not their NBC business card, but their AIPAC business card, and say, hey, contact me. We have something to talk about. AIPAC controls everything. They control Hollywood. They control the media. They control the newspapers. They control information. And now, because Miriam Edelson spent $200 million, they control the White House. And so what does this mean? This means that they also control the judiciary. And as we've seen, Congress is seeking to pass laws that impinge on the free speech of Americans anytime we criticize Israel. It's anti-Semitic now to criticize Israel, and they're trying to make that a crime. This is a total capitulation of everything America stands for on behalf of Israel. But even then, we could say they're Israeli, we're Americans. If Section 219 passes, there's no such thing as Israeli and Americans. It's a singularity. But it's not a singularity of equals. Israel is a parasite. It's a parasitic entity that's attached itself to the American host. And like the green wasp, which lays its eggs in the American cockroach, the eggs hatch and then the larva takes over the body of the cockroach. The cockroach surrenders itself to the larva while it consumes the cockroach from inside. America, that's our future. We have been bitten by the Israeli parasite. They've infected us, and if they pass 219, it's right in our system, and then it will grow, fester, and soon we will find out that the American Republic is literally an extension of Greater Israel. That's the danger of Section 219. If you wear an American uniform right now, understand that if this passes, you will no longer be fighting for America. You'll be fighting for Israel. Now, people say that was always the case, but it wasn't legally the case. Now it will be legally the case. Now you will be ordered to fight for Israel because it's a singularity. Take the flag off your shoulder. At least be honest about it. Put the Israeli flag on it. Take the flag down, the American flag down from the White House and raise the Israeli flag. We need to acknowledge what has happened here. We are no longer a constitutional republic known as the United States of America. We become an extension of Greater Israel. We're a Zionist entity, a Zionist enterprise, and we might as well be honest about it and raise the Star of David.
Scott, I need you to clarify a couple of other things regarding this. It's thoughts that I have. Is it true that by the end of the year or January 27, there's no longer the draft in the U.S. will no longer be voluntary, but it will be compulsory based on lottery? Is that true?
No.
Okay.
No, the United States is not going back to conscription. That's, first of all, if you want a revolution in the streets, that would be it. Now, they may be changing the laws that talk about, there's a requirement when you turn 18 that you have to register for selective service, which is the draft. They may be changing the laws about, how the draft would be conducted. But the United States military continues to be an all-volunteer service. There is no conscription. And should they try to put conscription, especially in this day and age right now, there would be riots in the streets, and you could be pushing this country towards civil war. The American people aren't going to allow a draft army at this point in time. Now, wait a couple of years as Israel takes us over, and then you'll see that there will be a gradual conditioning of the American people into accepting the inevitability, and the law enforcement will become more and more strict. America, you want to see your future? Look at Ukraine. Look at the conscription officers running around thumping people on the head, throwing them in a van, taking off the military. That's your future. That's a country with no rights. That's a country with no freedoms. That's a country where where the government says we are above the people. Israel is a government that says we are above the people, and Israel's taking on our government, and the basic freedoms that we enjoy as Americans will no longer exist. Freedom of speech will disappear. Freedom of assembly, and you will become literally, cannon fodder. Raw meat for whatever meat grinder Greater Israel wants to send American boys off to fight and die.
Section 219 generated remarkably little public debate. A bipartisan amendment by representatives across the aisle, Thomas Massie and Ro Hanna, to remove it was blocked from reaching the House floor. That's correct, right? And
correct.
And so it could not be debated on the House floor. It had to be voted as part of the package. And it needs to be mentioned that it narrowly passed the vote on the House floor by 216 to 212. 7 Republicans broke ranks, voted against it. Josh Brecheen, anyway, they're there. I've posted it on our Facebook and on our other accounts. So it was 7 Republicans who broke ranks, who voted against it, but there were 6 Democrats who crossed over and voted for it. Now, what's left for it to be applied into law is for it to pass through the Senate vote. When's that expected to happen? And then it goes to the president's office. So when's the Senate supposed to debate on it? I understand that the Senate is considering its own version. Slightly. So, is that a positive sign for the people who are worried about this getting passed? That maybe the Senate is trying to hold its ground, stand up for America?
No, the Senate's been bought out too. The fact that the Senate is considering its own version of Section 219 means the Senate is willing to renegotiate the terms of American surrender. The Senate version should eliminate 219 altogether, and then we would see that the Senate is controlled by Americans. This is just a normal power play by the Senate to the House. The Senate can't allow the House to dictate the terms of America's existence to it, so the Senate will modify a bill. Then they'll come together in committee and they'll come up with a joint version. It'll go back for votes, and because it's been, the compromise that it usually clears both houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate, both chambers. And then it goes to the president for signature. The president, has the option not to sign it. When you see a vote of this close, it implies that the Senate doesn't have, Congress doesn't have the ability to override this, a presidential veto. But will the president veto this legislation? I believe that Pete Hegseth, the current Secretary of Defense, is against this legislation. He recognizes it for what it is, total capitulation of the United States to Israel. And other members of the U.S. government, including the director of the CIA, is against this as well, because the CIA knows that Israel is an espionage nation focused on America, and this would basically open the doors for Israel to come in and just rob us blind. So the president will, there will be a political price to pay, and we have midterm elections coming up, and the president may not want a firestorm. So the Senate may slow roll this. They have the option not to vote on it immediately. They can hold off on it, put it down the road, and then what they can do is change it so much that it has to go back to the House, and then the House would have to debate it, which they of course avoided the first time around. And so there's some parliamentarian games that could be played. It's not 100%. The key thing is the Senate, that the Senate not surrender to the same pressures that the House capitulated to. If the Senate can delay this thing, they can modify it to the extent that it has to be debated in the House, or at least debated in committee. They may kill it nonetheless, because once the American people wake up to what's happening here, I do believe that the vast majority of more than 60% of the American people say we no longer identify with Israel as our bosom buddies. Well, if that's the case, then why are you allowing your representatives to clear the way for Israel to take over the United States? So there's still some hope left, but I think people need to be aware of the consequences of allowing Section 219 to pass as is. It is literally the death of America.
I had Tucker Carlson on 2 weeks ago, and we discussed this. And then when he posted about this, he posted a clip of our discussion, this particular part of our discussion. It went viral on his platforms, on all his platforms. What shocked me was the fact that Americans, you could tell from both sides of the aisle, were like, what is happening? We're only now hearing about this. And people were like referencing 7076 all over again, revolution. And it was, I realized that they try to make it go under the radar and pass it. But once Americans find out about this, they're not going to let this pass. And that's the greatest fear. You have patriots also like Joe Kent, who's trying to raise the alarm bells. He's calling it on his post a treasonous betrayal of our sovereignty. But what shocked me was I'm under the impression that the mastermind behind this is Bibi Netanyahu himself, because he, as the rest of them in Israel, are seeing the strong reaction by Americans, them also pressuring the congressmen and senators to the U.S. sending 3.3 or 4 billion a year in military funds to Israel, plus 21.7 billion more since October 23, right? So he's seeing this reaction, and he's figured out this way. He called in, when they called him up, once Senator Graham passed, from Fox. He's the first person they called for a reaction after Senator Graham passed. Anyway, he offered his opinion about Graham. We all know the connection they had, the relationship they had. And then he brought this subject into the panel as and he mentioned that it's about time Israel stops receiving these funds from the U.S. We've been receiving them for a long time, and he was promoting this sort of section in the NDAA as if it's a cooperation between two allies. And that's when I realized that he is the mastermind behind this, and it's making it, and by making, anyway, I want you to comment on that before I mention my other doubt.
Well, but you're 100% correct. Netanyahu can pick up the phone and make AIPAC do what Netanyahu wants AIPAC to do. AIPAC isn't acting on its own volition to buy Congress for the benefit of just AIPAC. They do it because they're using Israel as the justification for this, the need to support Israel. Netanyahu also understands that eventually, the political winds of change are blowing strong in America, and at some point in time, the American people are going to push back against the idea of this permanent, welfare state that's been created in the state of Israel that just sucks money out of the United States. So again, the welfare state status implies that Israel is separate from the United States and Israel's receiving aid from the United States. 219 blurs that. And that means that Israel is no longer receiving aid. Israel is the aid. Israel has the money. Israel owns the money. This is Israeli money already. America belongs to Israel. And you see what we've done there. We've liberated Israel from being a recipient of welfare, and we put Israel in charge of the corporation.
They're going to have their hand inside the honeypot of the 1.5 trillion a year that is the American defense budget. It's no longer, we're sending you over 4 billion a year plus any extra that, as I mentioned, 21.7 billion since October 23. No. Officially, in the eyes of Americans, it's like, we're no longer funding them for their military. But no, they're going to have their hand in the 1.5 trillion a year, correct? Plus an integration
1.85. Don't forget that on top of the 1.5 million, the Trump administration is asking for an additional $350 billion to pay for this war with Iran.
Okay, so it's
a lot more money than just 1.5 trillion. It's 1.85.
All right, and an integration also of the intelligence communities, which is completely shocking, and a complete capitulation of American sovereignty.
It's the end of it.
It's the end of it. But what's also concerning, and I need you to correct me if I'm getting it wrong, is that once if it does pass the Senate and it gets the approval of the president, it becomes permanent law. Decisions would no longer would move into Pentagon procurement instead of congressional votes, and no future president or Congress can withdraw without amending the law, or it would be considered a federal violation. Is that correct? That it ties any future president and any future House body of Congress? Huh?
Well, in theory, you're correct, but understand that neither the president nor Congress comply with law as written today. So if a president behaved as Donald Trump, he would just ignore the law, and there's nothing Congress can do about it. All I'm trying to say is America's become a lawless state. You're technically correct. You're legally correct. I'm just saying that we live in a different time right now where we have a president who doesn't recognize the rule of law, who violates the Constitution on a daily basis, and we have a Congress that seems to be okay with the president doing this. There's laws about insider trading that aren't just it's criminal offense, and the president commits multiple felonies a day that would normally put people in prison for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and yet nobody does anything because he's Donald Trump. He is the capo di capo. He's the head of the mafia family now that governs America. So I'm just laughing because you, like me, are somebody who appreciates the rule of law. And when we see something written down as law, where you're like, wow, this is serious. I'm here to tell you right now, in America, no law is serious. It's the law of the gun. It's the law of the thug. It's the law of the narcissist. And until Congress steps up and does something about it, that's the way it's going to be. The scary thing is that Israel is now going to be taking over the executive. So the thug that runs and operates in violation of law will be an Israeli thug. We'll call him an American president or her, but it's an Israeli thug because of 219. This is the reality. The American people are going to be lulled into a false sense of complacency because the parasite's still going to look like the host.
Before we skip to my other question, because we have to move on from this, I just wanted to make it a point that, as a point of reference for our viewers, Benjamin Netanyahu has now met with President Donald J. Trump more than twice as many times in the past 18 months alone, as Winston Churchill met with FDR during the entirety of World War II. I think you agree with that assessment, right?
Yeah, I think it shows the closeness of the relationship. I think he probably met with Donald Trump more times than Melania Trump met with Donald Trump. So sorry, I had to do that.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go. Let's go to the Iran war. Congressman Thomas Massie, who will only be around until the midterms. That man is great. Recently posted that the U.S. has been significantly weakened by the war with Iran. This administration depleted our missile defenses, drained our oil reserves, sacrificed our men and women, inflated the price of consumer goods, increased our debt, and neglected our domestic needs, all for Israel. I would also remind our viewers that on the first day of the Iran war, President Trump told the New York Times that the U.S. military intends to sustain its assault on Iran for 4 to 5 weeks if necessary. Scott, that was exactly 5 months ago. And finally, Mehdi Hassan's media company Zeteo, Z-E-T-E-O, reported a day or two ago that one senior administration official told them Trump has no effing way out, while sources said they did not believe that Trump's expansion of the war was off the table, far from it, end quote. And that his team was, quote, too scared, end quote, to tell him a massive escalation against Iran wouldn't work. Your comments on Massey's position and Trump's estimation that he would be done within 4.5, 5 weeks, and the insider information, the source coming through ZTO about the situation in the White House.
Well, I agree with Thomas Massey's assessment about this war and it being fought on behalf of Israel. We don't need to beat that horse. It's clear that that's the case. Look, Donald Trump, when he was briefed by Benjamin Netanyahu and the head of the Mossad on February 11th, he was told several things. He was told, one, that they could kill Ali Khamenei at will. That's the only honest thing that the Israelis said, because Ali Khamenei wasn't trying to avoid being killed. He simply stayed in his home with his 14-month-old granddaughter, and the Israelis murdered them both. It's not hard to do. It's not a great feat of arms. But then the Israelis said that when that happens, that the Iranian society will collapse, that they have the mechanism to exploit the leadership vacuum. They will suppress security, and the people will rise up, and a compliant pro-Western, pro-Israeli government will take over, and all the problems that have been manifested in Iran over the course of the past several decades will go away, such as nuclear, ballistic missiles, axis of resistance. What this means is that Israel and the United States didn't have a solution. Control of the Strait of Hormuz. We didn't have a solution for any of these major problems. The solution was a miracle. We would kill Ali Khamenei and then hope is not a strategy. Hope is the antithesis of a strategy. It's a prayer. It's a fantasy. And that's what this war always was a fantasy. Everything Donald Trump says about this conflict is predicated on the fact that he doesn't have a plan. If you take a look at the beginning of this war, we changed our plans, 10 times in 3 days, because as the reality set in that this wasn't happening the way we wanted to, this wasn't happening, this wasn't happening, we had to alter our plans, or at least be seen as altering our plans. But when your plan isn't attached to anything other than the murder of one man, you're basically addressing the symptoms of your failure, not addressing the root cause of your failure. The root cause was the decision to go to war. This war cannot be won. So it doesn't matter what Trump says. The fact is, he says something new every day because the reality requires him to recognize that what he said yesterday no longer applies. It's not a path to victory. He says something new. He's very frustrated. And this also is manifested in some of the things he said lately about blowing the you-know-what out of Iran. And now they're talking about escalation. Escalation with what? The reason why the 39-day war stopped is that we ran out of ammunition and we ran out of oil. We signed an MOU we never had any intention of complying with. Once we got our ammunition up and our oil stocks up, we attacked Iran again. Now we're stopping because we ran out of ammunition, we ran out of oil. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Escalation just means doing the same thing over and over again, and you're going to get the same result. So, the Russians have labeled Donald Trump as being emotionally unstable, and I think this plays out on a daily basis because he is basically making policy by social media posting. U.S. policy is not the byproduct of interagency processes and consultation. It's the byproduct of a warped mind of a diseased individual who every morning wakes up psychologically impaired and puts his frustrations out in a social media posting.
Scott, do you think the Pentagon has been underreporting the true number of U.S. casualties from the Iranian attacks on American bases in Jordan, Iraq, Kuwait, and Syria? Because there are claims that the attack on the U.S. base in Jordan resulted in 14, not 4, fatalities, rather than the 4 publicly reported by the Pentagon, along with more than 430 additional casualties. And that's just one base. What's your take on that?
Look, I'm somebody who served in the military in wartime, and I understand legal realities. There is a legal reality to notify next of kin of the death of a loved one within a specific time frame. This is a legal requirement. The president cannot, unless you are in a denied unit, a Tier 1 commando force, Delta Force, Task Force 160, sometimes the Rangers, and you're doing a classified assignment. When that's the case, they can deny your death in combat and reclassify your death as a training accident. That happens all the time. But the people that are dying aren't part of the Tier 1 commandos. These are average soldiers. There is an absolute 100% legal requirement to notify next of kin that cannot be overridden by the president under any circumstance. So we're not underreporting our dead. We're being accurate our dead, which reflects on the fact that the Iranians aren't trying to kill Americans. If they were, there'd be more dead. The Iranians are killing capability, not individuals. Where we are fudging it is in the number of wounded. We're not being honest with the American public about the number of wounded because there is no similar legal notification requirement to next of kin about death. And also there's issues of classification of wounds. Is it really a wound or is it a medical issue? Things of that nature. And then the protection of individual rights, medical information precludes the release of data. So I think we are hiding the number of wounded because that's embarrassingly high. We have to explain if we've defeated the Iranians, why they're able to inflict so many casualties on us. And we also don't want to discuss the nature of the wounds. The Americans are conditioned to view their men and women in uniform as walking heroes, stud warriors. We put them on a pedestal. They're great. God bless the troops until they get wounded. And then we forget about them. We'll shed a tear for them. We'll read a story of mother. We'll talk about the mother who mourns that her son is wounded. But then we don't want to remember because it's inconvenient. Because what do you do with a paraplegic? What do you do with a quadriplegic? What do you do with somebody who's brain damaged, drooling in a cup? They require long-term care. And we don't want to remember that. We want our heroes intact. We don't want to view our heroes broken because if they're broken, we have to ask, why did we do this? Why did this happen? What was it that we sent this person off to become broken? Why is his wife not able to go on vacations, but instead has to be with a man drooling in a cup who will never make love to her again, and she's trapped, so she leaves him. So this man's now in the hospital, his parents die out, and at 40 years of age, nobody cares for him. What about the guy that's got the back pain, the brain pain? They give him oxycodone to come in and deal with the pain, but then they take it away from him. He's under pain, so he starts shooting up heroin. And we abandon him. Now he's a drug addict in the street, turned to robbery, and he goes to jail. A criminal. Why? Because we broke him. And he'll end up getting released from jail, unable to have a job on the streets. I was a firefighter. I would drive the ambulance, and we'd pick these veterans up from Vietnam in the wintertime, freezing to death on the streets, abandoned by society, take them to the Veterans Affairs Hospital where they would thaw them out, sober them up, and send them right back into the street so I could pick them up again next month. They had the veterans groups. How many veterans actually go to the veterans groups and talk to these guys, sit down with them? You can't, because it breaks your heart. So I'm sick and tired of people talking about supporting the troops. And I'm sick and tired of a government that won't be honest with the American people about the wars we fight. We have to make sure that before we send the men and women who honor us by putting on the uniform off to war, that it's a war worthy of the sacrifice we're asking them to make. And that means if we're going to say this is worthy, we have to be honest about the totality of it. And this president will never be honest about what we're doing in Iran, because to be honest about what we're doing in Iran means that we're fighting Israel's war for Israel on behalf of Israel, and American bodies are being broken because of Israel.
Bouncing off that, I hate to stay on this, but it was part of what I wanted to ask. I didn't know you were going to take it in that direction.
I didn't know it either.
Scott. Okay, I'd like you to comment on something that's been making the rounds online, and it really, really got to me, and I'm not an American, Scott. There's a video of Israeli finance minister, the finance minister, Smotrich. Everyone knows him. The finance minister, he talks more about war than finance. Appearing on an Israeli television channel, it's gone viral for what many are describing are unhinged comments. Have you seen it?
I believe I have.
He says Israel has no interest in officially joining the war with Iran because, in his words, the current situation is good for us. You've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, your comments. I mean, you just expressed yourself that you're going to war for others.
Well, I think I've already commented on it. I despise Smotrich. I despise Ben Gvir. I despise Netanyahu. I despise every Israeli that walks the face of the earth today. There's no such thing as an innocent Israeli. Every Israeli is guilty of the crimes committed by their nation. I just saw the movie The Odyssey. I know a lot of people are hitting on it because it's woke and it's DEI and all this stuff, and it didn't honest to Homer. You know what? The movie's job isn't to be honest to Homer. The movie's job is to send a message, and it's a morality lesson. If you take a look at the way Matt Damon played Odysseus, and you watch the travails, look at his eyes as Troy burns. Look at his eyes as he realizes that he's responsible for the death and destruction. Look at his eyes as he betrays Athena as the priestess is beheaded. Look at his eyes as he is confronted with the dead that he is responsible for over time. And listen to his voice when he confesses his sins to Penelope. That is a citizen who has come to grips with the crimes he has committed in the name of the cause he purports to support. That's the importance of the Odyssey movie, not any of that other crap. It's a message about the responsibility of a warrior to the society he serves and the fact that he has betrayed that responsibility. And to me, that was the lesson for every American. He recognized, if you remember in the movie, Penelope said, "So you are the people from the sea." Because everybody was talking about at the Battle of Troy how barbarians were coming in and raiding the shores and civilization was dying. And he was the people from the sea. He was the barbarian. America is the people from the sea. Israel is the people from the sea. These two lawless societies are tearing the world apart, destroying civilization. And we all have a duty and responsibility to look in the mirror and call ourselves out for the sins that we have committed in support of the nations that are committing these sins. We are as guilty as those who order the sins to be done, because either we are committing the sins or we are standing by and allowing the sins to be committed. There is no such thing as an innocent citizen of a democracy. Every American is guilty of every crime America commits in Iran. Every Israeli is guilty of every crime committed in the name of Greater Israel. So I condemn them all. I condemn all of America and I condemn all of Israel, until which time we have the courage to stand up, look in the mirror, and call ourselves out for the sins that have been committed in our names.
But Smotrich's comments are really provocative. It shows how much he appreciates the Americans who are putting their lives out for their interests.
It's not appreciation.
Exactly.
It's not appreciation. It's mocking.
Yes.
It's mocking. So he doesn't appreciate America. He despises America.
Unhinged.
He mocks America. He hates America. So what do you want me to say to this? Invite him to my home? Throw a knife in the middle of the floor and say, "One knife, two men, let's do it"? He doesn't have the courage to do that. None of the Israelis have the courage to do that. What he's acknowledging is he is a coward, an absolute coward. because no man would let another man do his bidding. No man would stand by and let another man fight his cause. He's exposed the fact that Israel is a nation of mice, of eunuchs. That's the reality when I hear him speak this. So I despise him. I despise Israel. I despise everything about them. And I despise any Americans that allow their sons and daughters to go off and die for that fat piece of human excrement.
They brag about it. They're audaciously bragging about it. And that has to stop. They need to know from America that no more.
How can they stop?
No
they just
more.
took over America.
Well,
they took us over.
I don't know. The people you're voting in, you got to stop voting them in. But then
let me just take you back to the Odyssey. Take me back to the Odyssey.
Take me back to the Odyssey.
Odysseus ate the lotus leaves to forget.
Yeah.
Calypso kept feeding him the lotus so he would forget, never remember. Okay. Americans eat the lotus plant every day. It's called a cocoon of comfort, consumerism. And as long as we yes, that's right. We get on the narcotic of the cell phone. We do online shopping. We can watch pornography, whatever we need to make ourselves feel relevant in this pathetic little life that we're living. We wrap ourselves in this cocoon of comfort. And I brought up pornography because basically the porn industry is run by the Israelis. So the Israelis are addicting Americans to something that degrades their moral values. Yay, Israel. Go Israel. You guys are the best. They're the worst. They're the scum of the earth, but we're the ones that let it happen because we eat the lotus leaf of consumerism every day, and we want to live in comfort, and we're afraid of anything that could threaten to break that cocoon open and make us deal with the harsh realities of life.
And then you have AIPAC also putting out the posts after every election or midterm election that we own 95% of the Hill. We own it.
And yet the American people sit there and go, oh, we're not allowed to talk about it. You see, that's anti-Semitic.
That's anti-Semitic.
We're not allowed to talk to the fact that the Israeli lobby controls the New York Times, controls the Washington Post, controls every major media outlet, controls CBS News,
CNN.
ABC News, Fox News, CNN, everything. Every
Paramount.
piece of information we receive in the mainstream media goes through a pro-Israeli filter. That's the reality. Why do you think Tucker Carlson is where he is today? Because the Israeli lobby wouldn't allow him to stay at Fox. This is the reality. Now, Tucker's doing well, but most people who break free of mainstream media aren't doing well. It's very difficult to survive in this independent media environment. I'm just waiting for the FBI to decide that this articulation we're having here today has become politically inconvenient, and they'll send another 40 frickin' agents through my door to shut me down. Free speech isn't free in a country that doesn't recognize free speech.
Now, I want to go to another thing that's making the rounds since yesterday, and again,
you just want to get my blood pressure up, is what you want to do. So,
Scott, we haven't spoken in a while. I told you we have a lot of things to unpack, but we missed having you around. George was so excited to know that it's you today. We really love having you around.
Okay, next question.
Okay, another video that's making the rounds. It's not us making it up. So the Wall Street Journal and other media have reported on previously unreleased footage of the late now Senator Graham celebrating the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. In the video, I'm sure you've seen it. It's gone viral. He says, "Woohoo, we've done it. I almost cried. How long have we been pushing this? We've been..." God, let me find it. We've been, how long have we been pushing this? We've been pushing this for years. It's the best thing I've ever done. There are a lot of people inside who didn't want to do it. I've had my challenges. And then he compares Trump and Bibi like that they are the Roosevelt and Churchill of our time. So what struck many viewers were two things. First, what they saw as his unrestrained elation and sense of personal triumph over military action, over engaging America in war, basically, for someone else. And second, his comparison of President Trump, really, and Bibi to two of the 20th century's most emblematic wartime leaders. So your comment again, Scott.
Well, again, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is part of, these are extracts from a documentary that has yet to be released. All right, so this is important to point out. This is not Lindsey Graham being unscripted. This is Lindsey Graham operating from a script. when you do a documentary, when you have cameras following you around, especially somebody as controlled as Lindsey Graham, every shot is pre-planned. Every moment is dictated. He thought through what he was going to say. They understood the camera angle, the lighting, the sound, everything had to be perfect. This isn't following with a handheld camera getting spontaneous remarks. This is part of a documentary that Lindsey Graham was putting together to promote his candidacy for the Senate and beyond. So what you're seeing isn't the unscripted Lindsey Graham. It's worse. This is the scripted Lindsey Graham. This is Lindsey Graham knowing exactly what he's saying, why he's saying it. There's a reason why. And it makes him even uglier than he is. We're all guilty, all of us. Maybe not you because you're Susie, you're infallible. But me, I'm guilty of the following. I can get to a bar with a friend and drink a beer and start saying some crazy stuff, especially if I get angry and the filter goes off. I can go off and say the dumbest things in the world. And if somebody's filming that, man, it will look bad. But there's a difference between spontaneous bursts of outrage and anger and somebody sitting back and saying, okay, take a deep breath, let's be calm, and now let's put forward my best foot. What you saw there was Lindsey Graham's best foot. That's how he wants to be remembered. And that's scary because he thinks this is a good thing. He thinks what he's saying puts him in a positive light. What it exposes the actual moral depravity of this individual, the fact that he is glorifying war. You will never find a combat veteran who glorifies war the way that Lindsey Graham glorifies war. This is proof positive that he was nothing but an armchair lawyer who prosecuted people for going AWOL to make a phone call to their wife. That's the kind of man he is. He's not a warrior. He could never get involved in any physical activity of that nature. He doesn't have the courage. He doesn't have what it takes to do that. But he's one of the people that sit back like Smotrich, fat, ugly, and basically starts pontificating in favor of violence he doesn't have the courage to participate in directly. At least I know this. I have the courage to participate in violence directly. I have participated in violence directly, and I would participate again as a 65-year-old. So if I'm going to promote violence, then I'll be on the front doing it. But I don't promote violence because I know what violence brings. Violence brings death and destruction. There has to be a better way of solving the world's problems than seeking a path towards conflict. And Lindsey Graham is a man who says all he wants is war. He condemns himself as a warmonger, as the worst possible human being. And this wasn't spontaneous. This is the Lindsey Graham that he wanted the world to see. This was scripted. And it's uglier than ugly.
Well, before I go to my final question, it's a doubt that I had. I was thinking to ask you or not to ask you, but I'm just going to ask you. It's a quick one. And, well, you know how he had the sudden death, right? But hasn't it fueled speculation? Because according to claims, at the very same night he passed away, Russia allegedly destroyed the Ukrainian drone facility that he had just visited earlier that day, where he had been photographed gleefully posing with a drone in his hands. So do you think that it's just an extraordinary coincidence, or is there something here that deserves closer scrutiny when it comes to his sudden passing? Was it something that they want to hide?
Well, let me put it this way, because I'm a mean, vindictive son of a bitch. I don't want Lindsey Graham to have died in a bombing attack on the drone factory, because it would have been a quick death. I want Lindsey Graham to have died the way they say he died, with an aortal tear. It's the most painful death imaginable. His last moments were in sheer agony, screaming in pain. That's how a devil like him needs to go. So I'm hoping that the story they tell about the truth of Lindsey Graham, they say that how he died, I'm hoping that's the truth, because that is the best death possible for a coward like that, alone, screaming in pain with nobody there to help him. His last moments were sheer pain-filled moments of torture. And that sort of makes me happy. Okay, if he died in a drone factory in a burst of glory, no, that's how he would want to go. Okay. Now, I think he died alone, in pain, on the floor screaming for help that never came. And I know I'm going to get condemned. I'm going to go up to the gates of heaven, and St. Peter's going to open the book, and there's going to be a huge freaking black mark on the page for what I just said. Yes, I agree. I shouldn't think that way. I should be a human. I should not want this. But Lindsey Graham is the worst possible person in the world. He's not a person. He's a devil. He's a demon. And nobody would want a demon to die peacefully.
Okay. Scott.
You asked the question, so you get the answer.
Yeah, I know. With you, it's always no filter, as you say. And this is Unfiltered with Sam, the show. Before we ended, I wanted to ask you about the Strait of Hormuz and its status. So the reports that, Iran rejected Oman's proposal over the area that Oman would control because they were in negotiations about how to deal with the straits there. Because Iran, I assume, considered it disproportionate to Oman's size, the control that Oman wanted to have over the straits. So how should we all understand the legal status of the strait? In other words, who does the Strait of Hormuz belong to? Does it belong to Iran, to Oman, to both, or to the international community, considering all the traffic that passes through there and how the whole world depends on it?
Well, if you read international law, there's a specific treaty of the sea law of whatever, I don't know, I can't remember the exact name of it. It defines what an international waterway is. The Strait of Hormuz is not an international waterway. Okay. It's not. Oman and Iran can both make territorial claims through the delineation. And if you take a look at the original agreement that was struck between Oman and Iran, it was the Omanis controlled the one passage, the Iranians controlled the other passage. But there was an agreement on the taking of tolls and the fact that once you establish the tolling, that was the control mechanism. Then Oman went behind Iran's back and negotiated a deal with the United States to allow shipping to slip through. So as far as the Iranians are concerned, the Omanis violated this agreement. And therefore, Iran now has taken control of the totality of the strait based upon the original intent of the original agreement that Oman violated. And Iran now controls the totality of the strait. Nothing will get through without Iran's permission. Now, if Oman wants to renegotiate ownership, understand that it'll be done on different terms than done. They're not to be trusted again. But that's where we're standing. Iran is in total control, absolute control of the Strait of Hormuz. No shipping is going through, or at least very minimal shipping is going through, and the shipping that does go through goes through the Iranian-controlled waters based upon terms set by Iran. Nothing's getting through, or so insignificant amounts of shipping are getting through the Omani side that's being mined, or if they come in, they get hit with missiles, and the U.S. can't stop it. This is the frustrating thing for Donald Trump, is there's nothing the U.S. could do to change that reality. The Strait of Hormuz belongs to Iran. Iran alone will determine whether shipping goes through or not, and that's something the United States so far is unwilling to accept as reality.
Scott, as always, thank you very much for taking the time to join us and for sharing your insights and analysis. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to welcoming you back again soon.
Okay, thanks a lot. Have a great day.
You too. So if you found this conversation valuable, please take a second and hit the like button. Leave your thoughts also in the comments, and very importantly, share this interview with family, with friends, and across your social media. That's how independent conversations like these reach more people. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the notification bell. Simply subscribing isn't enough. YouTube often won't notify you about new interviews unless you click the bell and select all. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next time, take care.